Welcome back to Taiwan Outlook. Our guest today is Deputy Chief Editor of China Times, Mr. Guo Chonglun. Chonglun, we've been talking about the competition of the media business in Taiwan. But I think most people will agree that media have become very, very influential in Taiwan's domestic and also foreign policies. How do you see the tension or the cooperation between the media and the government in Taiwan?
I think from the beginning, media have been an active participant in the Taiwan democratization and liberalization process. I think China Times and other news media, I think mostly they are for lifting of martial laws.
That's right.
Partly because they are doing it for their own interests, because at that time, there's still restriction on how many pages you can print.
That's right.
And where you can print. I mean, at that time, you can only print it in Taipei. But already the newspaper had a huge demand of time pressure. You have to diversify and print it in Taichung and Kaohsiung. So, and also the advertisement demands have been huge. We cannot no longer restrict it to only 3 broadsheets. So this been lifting, and also with that lifting the registration of the newspaper, meaning you have more people can join in. But those newcomer usually would be crowded out by the old establishment. I would say that only so far 2 have been successful. One is Liberty Times, one is Apple Daily. But besides that, I think newspaper and media is in this huge demands for more liberalization. And this position have been pretty well established. But about 10 years ago, we are entering a second phase. This phase is more independence vis-a-vis the unification ideology conflict. The newspaper I'm working with is more for unification, at least nominally. What we are arguing is that it's not really a unification approach, it's more a realistic approach. By announcing that you are going to be independent, you are only asking for for the Chinese force against on Taiwan, even without the U.S. security guarantee. That's our newspaper stand, but that's different from other newspapers.
That's right.
I would say that starting from after this election, maybe we are entering the third phase, meaning that with this mandate, the President Ma Ying-jeou may be pursuing a more aggressive China policy. If he's successful, he can change the mandate. He can broaden his mandate in a way by progress this China policy, incorporating those people who had not voted for him, and we may be away from this unification independent ideology. Or maybe I'm wrong about that. But I think for Taiwan, the future challenge will be more than we can imagine. There's a globalization challenge.
Right.
There's a cross-strait interaction challenge. I think those are the challenge we must face in the future.
I agree that most media, especially every media in Taiwan, also in the world, always takes some positions on some issues, especially when it comes to very strong ideological issues. But the question is about whether you should take that kind of position on the reporting news or editorial page. Do you think that you have problems in separating these two? When you write editorial page, you are more ideological, you are more partisan. But when you are working on the facts, you should be more fair and neutral.
I think what Zizhen had raised is a very good point. Just take the candidate itself, for example. In the United States, you can just put out an editorial saying that I'm endorsing this candidate or that. But in Taiwan, we don't do that. I mean, even the most extreme one don't do that, because we still try to pretend that we are somewhat independent and try to be neutral. But in terms of news writing and and the news analysis that is presented in the newspaper not different from the editorial, I think all of us should be very careful on that. I would say that on news reporting, no newspaper can afford to lose a major story. Right. If this story can be interpreted as unification, that even the Liberty Times would not dare not to print the story.
Right.
If the story is interpreted as independence, even the United Daily and China Times will not dare to print it. But the matter is, how do you interpret it?
That's right.
And how do you
lay out the facts.
Right. These are the things I think is subject for the reader to decide. Sometimes it's, we have the social groups who is making the regular review and comment on the news reporting. I think as a member of the newspaper business, we accept that humbly. But we will also would like to have a chance to argue with that, that this kind of criticism and argument, I think, would be good for a very constructive relationship. I would not say that for television. Television sometimes is really overdo it. I mean,
they even fabricate the news.
They fabricate the news. They think which clip have been would be good for rating. They will repeat that over and over again. Right. When you watch that, you are getting sick of it. But sometimes they will say that it's all about rating. I mean, we know that we are going to be criticized by society, but people watch it anyway. I mean, I can show you the rating chart. I mean, whenever we show that, the rating will be high. And the rating, advertisers always watch the rating. So what can we do? I mean, this kind is a vicious cycle. It's not only you need outside criticism, but you need the self-discipline on that.
But the general perception in Taiwan is that the print press is more serious about reporting news than the televised news and so on. But under the pressure from the televised media, the fact-finding process has been squeezed. In other words, there are also problems in doing this kind of fact-checking and fact-finding. Do you find difficulties in improving your fact-finding process?
I think this have to do with the people in charge of newspaper. We saw that the television had been going on for days. If we want to pick up the story, the editor of our newspaper will ask, would you go a little bit more than the television reporting? If you are just repeating, we'll give up the story. We don't need to print that story because everyone had watched it on the television. So if you want to print the story, we need to have additional confirmation, we need to have additional story added to that. Otherwise, we can bear the consequences of losing a story.
That's right. But in many democracies, or all democracies, there seems to be a tension between the media and the government because the government tend to be very critical of the government's policies and so on. What's the situation in Taiwan?
I think a lot of criticism is coming from the Green, saying that the people supporting Ma Ying-jeou, they are owned by Ma Ying-jeou government. But I would say that just wait and see after Ma Ying-jeou get in office. I think we are going to see a quite different relationship after 3 months or half a year of this. You can see in other countries like in France, Sarkozy, and in Lee Min-bo in South Korea. Their rating have plunged within a year of their, I mean, not even a year for Lee Min-bo. I think that will happen for Ma Ying-jeou and also for Liu Zhaoxuan's government.
Tell us, how long do you think the honeymoon will be between the media and the new government?
I think so far there's not a strong criticism is that because they haven't done a lot. They just get in office. But the person they pick already have causing quite a different opinion on them. One is the leaving of Zhan Qixian. Zhan had been representing the native Taiwanese in Ma's campaign team. his leaving is a bad omen for them. I mean, this has been raised the attention of media. The second is Lai Xingyuan's appointment of the Mainland Affairs Council. This is not really a criticism, but it's how do you present your China policy in a more coherent and logical way. It's not that you let those two people infighting with each other. That's called balance. You need to have a coherent mechanism for balancing. And I think for Ma Ying-jeou's government, they have urgency for deliver. They need to deliver by the end of July, I would say. By that time, the mainland tourists or the regular shuttle between Taiwan and China, they have to deliver those kind of things. If by delivering that and will minimize the bad effect that can brought, and they can claim the initial success. But I would say that would by the end of this year, I think that would prove. But it's a critical test because at early next year there's going to be local elections.
That's right.
And local election is a confidence vote for them. Right.
And also another criticism that the media, as you know, have received from the general public is about the so-called double standard. In other words, when it comes to Ma Ying-jeou, the media take lower the standard, but when it comes to the Green Party or the outgoing DPP, the media tend to be more critical. Do you think that's a fair statement?
Double standard is something I heard a lot about the criticisms. But when you read the newspaper these days, all the reference is about the previous government and the current government. I think this is too early to say. Still, I would say by the end of this year, the relation between media and Ma Ying-jeou will be tense. I would say another word. Ma Ying-jeou is not the person who will work on the person-to-person relations. People say that inside the KMT, the current legislative Yuan president Wang Jinping had no enemy, and for Ma Ying-jeou, no friend.
No friends.
And it's true for the media relations. Sometimes in several incidents, we find that Ma Ying-jeou's inner circle is very tight. The inner circle, I wouldn't say that it's a healthy phenomenon. I would say that this kind of very tight tracing who is leaking what news is somewhat, is not a normal circumstances. So I think this kind of tension is going to, I think this is not normal, right?
That's a very interesting point. When we come back, we'll talk about that, because after the March 22nd Ma's victory, President-elect Ma and President Ma has hosted several press conferences already, especially international conferences. So when we come back, we will talk about your view about his performance at the press conferences. So don't go away. We'll be back after this message.